Hi there, I'm Angela, and if you're anything like me, you might be a fan of books that have just a little bit of every genre. A little bit of horror, a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of the dystopian, a little bit of the in too much of reality but might be dystopian. And if that's the case today, I have several books that fall right into that speculative fiction category that has just a little bit of everything. First on the list is Rouge by Mona Awad. This follows our main character who has this obsession with beauty products as well as emulating her mother's beauty and her mother's standards of beauty. Her mother recently passed away, and so as she's cleaning up her mother's affairs, she gets this invitation to this culty, very exclusive spa that her mother seemed to have some part in. This book is in that sweet spot of horror, a little bit of fantastical, magical, maybe horror. There's also some of that reality in terms of beauty products and beauty standards. I actually went to an event where Mona Awad was talking about this new book, and she talked a lot about her obsession with the beauty products and skincare products specifically during the pandemic when she was kind of thinking about this book. This writing style also has this very hazy, ephemeral quality, almost like when you're in a spa and there's a lot of steam and mist and essential oils kind of floating in the air. You know that sense of like you're floating in a cloud in this alternative dimension where it feels really comfortable and relaxing and super mellow, but at the same time, because your guard is lowered, there is this sense of fear that, oh no, I'm very vulnerable here. The writing style perfectly captures that essence. And even with the main discussion being centered around beauty standards and kind of the superficiality of what that really means, there is also this deeper discussion following the main character as she is biracial and she is being raised by a single white mother. And so we have the dueling forces of this concept of colorism that is also tied to beauty standards that her mother pushes. If you want something that's a little soft horror where the scariness is kind of like little tendrils that creep up when you least expect them to, I think that this would be a really great book to read. I love Mona Awad's writing, and especially I think in this book the writing style is very clearly the star. The next book is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. This follows a scientist who discovers a way to clone human beings and then unexpectedly finds out that her husband is actually cheating on her with a clone version of her. Here we have another one of my favorite intersections, which is between science fiction and morality and self-reflection. Because the main character's husband is cheating on essentially her, she has to kind of really reflect on, well, what are the parts of me that are not enough for him that he has to find it in a clone version. And then there's also this question of what makes up yourself, what makes up your personality, what parts of your experiences and your behaviors are really part of you, and does changing those little quirks make you less you? The main character is also quite pessimistic. She's kind of this very unhappy, very high-strung person. She's really put into this pressure cooker situation where she's expected to deliver a lot of good results in a really male-dominated industry where a lot of people don't expect great things from her. And I think that character voice and that outlook really guides this exploration into her relationship to this more domestic side where she also has this identity of being a wife and a partner to her husband, but what does that really mean? And I think it also has light exploration into what society views as proper womanhood and domesticity from the view of her husband, who has these certain expectations for what his wife should do. Very interesting book that hits on that light sci-fi note. It has a very, I would say, unlikable main character, but is very interesting main character. And I do love the concept of being able to have a conversation with myself. That would be so trippy. Next, we have Severance by Ling Ma. This is set in a post-pandemic world where a pandemic has made people into living zombies. We follow our main character who has joined up with this band of survivors to get to the safe house. While we're following their journey, we're diving back into our main character's history as she worked in corporate America. Because we have the post-pandemic aspect, there is this science fiction dystopian-esque view of the world of how would the world end, what would it look like. And while I was reading this post-COVID, it actually did kind of hit me really hard how a lot of the things in this book actually did happen. So kudos to Ling Ma for being able to predict the future. More so than the hardships of the pandemic, I think the book also really follows on this concept of corporate monotony. Our main character is part of a company where she is in charge of producing Bibles mainly. And so you have this very like corporate cookie cutter kind of asinine take on something that is very emotional and a very personal and kind of spiritual topic like religion. And I think it also hits on the point of we're living in this world where you're taught to want so much more from your life, whether that's in terms of material things or in terms of like life fulfilling goals, things like that. And yet everything is so out of reach because it's so expensive, it's so unattainable, or the bar just keeps getting higher and higher. And so those kind of explorations into this very real world and also this very unreal world post-pandemic made for a really interesting kind of dual POV between past and present. I also really like this book because of the way it covered the second-gen immigrant experience. Our main character's parents were first-gen immigrants into the US, and then she's a second-gen. She has a lot of these interactions with this factory in China where she's kind of like has these very common second-gen experiences where she's speaking in this like kind of stilting Chinese. She feels very awkward because she doesn't relate to them culturally, but she feels like she should. And there's parts of the people in China that she's interacting with that are very familiar, but at the same time extremely foreign. And she kind of feels stuck between these two worlds. Very much feels like it was written from experience. I quite enjoyed the exploration into the kind of uncomfortable awkwardness of these situations. Next, we have And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. This is another post-pandemic book where in this pandemic people are hit with this kind of mass hysteria virus where they see people as flesh-eating zombies and then they act out in very extreme ways. So usually that means that they are starting fires, they're killing people unnecessarily, and generally causing a lot of unrest and disturbance in society. And so we're following this main character who is quote-unquote cured, where they had this virus and they acted very violently while having this virus, but then they were sent to a facility where they have learned to control what they're seeing and kind of rewrite history. When I first read this book, I classified it as a more literary horror in the sense that the things that happened as a result of this pandemic are very horrific. We do get memories from the main character when they were kind of in the thick of the virus and delusions from it, and they were so convinced of the actions they needed to take to protect themselves, to protect their friends, and yet when they're hit with the reality of what they actually did to innocent people, it is almost too horrific to bear. And in that sense, the horror is very real and very gory and very unsettling. But it is also very literary in the sense that we're looking at this from like a past reflective point of view. So we're exploring it through their memories and kind of like seeing how they saw it at the time, and then also with this undercurrent of knowing that what the main character saw and experienced might not be reality. And so what does that mean? Does it mean that they're a bad person? Does that mean that everybody else who has this is bad? Are they justified? Is there any way for these two kind of sides of them to coexist in this new world? I think this was a relatively short book that did a good job at examining this horror from kind of removed perspective, very reflective way. But I would say that this is definitely light plot, mostly vibes, a lot of reflection. The final book I'm recommending is Annie-Bot by Sierra Greer. This book is set in a future where AI has become advanced enough that we can make them into robots, and of course the first thing we get are sex bots. We follow Annie, who is a sex bot turned lived-in girlfriend, and we follow her journey as she kind of starts out as this person who very much loves and serves her boyfriend, but then slowly a lot of things happen to her where she starts gaining her own sense of self, her own consciousness, her own wants and needs that differ from just serving her man. What I love about this book is that for a book that focuses on AI or like focuses on robots becoming human, it's not so much of like the moralities of like, are AI humans, but it's more examining the role of women in society by using AI and robots. What we have in Annie is this caricature of what like a docile, quote unquote, perfect wife or girlfriend should be, very like serving, very meek, very much like I have no other thoughts and free will. And you contrast that with her boyfriend, who is this very complex, but I feel like realistic view of men that are formed from the worst parts of the patriarchy. There's a sci-fi element, there's a social commentary element, and I think it also balances really well between having a strong, fast-moving plot, as well as having a lot of points of reflection on who Annie is and what she thinks she is. I found this to be a really interesting book, and so far one of my favorite takes on the AI robot moral dilemma / what actually would happen in reality if this happened. Those are all the books that I have for you all. I love speculative fiction. It's one of those categories that as soon as I spy it in a synopsis, I'm immediately drawn to it. And so I can't wait to explore more and share more with you all. As usual, my Instagram and Goodreads are linked in the description below. Please come find me there. Let's be friends. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.